So just to summarise maybe some points, I just want to put some really obvious things on a PowerPoint. We have a problem with that project from beginning to end, from starting as a forum and then flip-flopping from a blog to a website to a pack of cards to a radio play. That whole process took 18 months to 2 years to start from nothing to multi-platform, and involved what I call a lot of noodling, which is kind of like picking up tools without reading the manual and having a go. I don't think I know anybody who's read the Microsoft Word manual, and they'd be a very sad person if they had. As opposed to what most commissioners like, which is they want to know what the format of your thing is before you even start. You're going to write a book. Oh, yes, it's in that. I know how many words on a page and roughly what the font is and how many pages is it going to be, and all those things get sorted very early on. So you know what you're aiming at, whereas with a lot of interactive work you don't know what you're aiming at. And that really upsets funders, I find. Defining the shared landscape, because this was about childhood and lost places. Anybody over the age of about 30 or 35 knows that it isn't just sort of virtual spaces that are quite fragile and can disappear when you turn the computer off. Is that most physical spaces are quite fragile and buildings get knocked down and people die and trees grow and trees die, and so when you go back to the spaces that you thought were going to last forever, they haven't. So that's obviously a very obvious place to share stuff, is to find themes and landscapes and playgrounds that people feel comfortable in and understand what they're sharing, what the rules are, what the main themes of their engagement are. Because it's not going to be everything. You don't go online just to find everything. That's just bullshit. Embracing the non-digital. As somebody who I spend a lot of time on the digital world, I'm getting more and more interested in the merging of the two and the idea that interactive work is not about getting people to spend more time staring at screens like we are right now. It's more about getting them outdoors and talking to each other and getting social and being active. So it's making strategic use of screen time to sort of energise people to go out and do their own thing. That seems to be really important, and that is a point. I work with broadcast a lot. Broadcasters do not get it. They just want people to stare at screens more. Whether it's a mobile phone screen, a computer screen, or a TV screen, they just want you to look at a screen. So there's a big sort of cultural divide between two types of digital writer at that point. It's important, I think, to understand. This is something I think writers get freaked out about in online environments, is that you go very violent switches between very intense, serious issues to really trivial nonsense. And there's no sort of continuity. You're only one click away from a weird animal video. So that's really hard to handle. And so then it does rather define, the kind of work where you're at. Can what you're writing about, can you handle that? Can you idea that people are going to come on and be facetious or provide links to material that you find frankly insulting or even downright rude? What are you going to do with that? Which I think the response to that is that as long as you're always kind of sincere, i.e. you are the person you say you are and not some trucker from Milwaukee, is that that audiences will trust, will be playful in a not too aggressive or weird way. I have found. I don't think there are that many wackos out there, and I think as long as everybody's, communicates their sincerity quite early on, you do find, again, as in playgrounds, there's always going to be a bully and the mad kid with a wild look in their eyes, but most people just want to play Tig. And that's got issues around. I sit in my room with my hand on the mouse like this and my ears plugged with music, and I sit there and it's incredibly bad for my posture and my social life with a glare and the windows closed, and I'm very alone, and yet I'm somehow very connected to a bunch of other people. And writing is obviously quite a solitary thing. I think William Gibson said that he tried blogging for a while but he didn't like it because it's It's like writing, it's like trying to boil the kettle with the lid off, he said. Because he just couldn't compress it down and concentrate on getting his shit done because he couldn't be alone enough. So trying to balance the alone time and the connected time is really tough, frustrating. I'm not going to say anything about that because we've already talked a lot about that, and I thought there was some really, I think the issues are covered in the other presentation actually, and we could talk endlessly about that. I've talked a little bit about that, about my mother says, when are you going to write a book? And I said, oh, I haven't finished doing the website yet. But there is still a huge amount of value, as I've said with the cards, is in having a physical object and also a portable object that is highly formatted. So books have a role to play in this landscape as another platform, as an output at some point. So I'm not ruling that out by it being online all the time. I think games are really important to this, and game dynamics, as I keep mentioning. Both card games, parlour games, playground games, and then console games and all the more complicated digital ones. So the more you can understand about the pros and cons of game playing, I think that will stand anybody in good stead who tries to write online. And my last one was this: save ourselves, save yourselves. This seems to me quite a lot of what the impulse for people online is when they engage with personal media and personal writing projects, is that quite often what they're trying to do is save a version of themselves in digital form, whether it be a photo album. That thing about having 100 terabytes or whatever, the way I read about it was most interesting, was that you could basically put the soundtrack of your whole life on your phone from birth to death as a series of audio files. You could record it in real time and save it all in one mobile phone. Not video yet, but basically you could have one long MP3 of that. So that's what I know, and people will start doing that. And then the other side of that is that then that's something that you do hand on. You know, my kids didn't really, well, they didn't meet my dad because he died before they were alive. Now, all they've got is some black and white photo and this. They don't have his voice or anything like that. But I'm really looking forward to really annoying my great-grandchildren with karaoke renditions of The Doors that will automatically fire up at 6 a.m. every morning in their bedroom whether they try to stop it or not. So there's great digital potential for planting yourself in the system at all kinds of places, and I think we've only just scratched the surface of how fantastic that will be. But the people who will be really, really good at that, I think, will be writers. And maybe you can do that for other people, just as we talked about requiems. It's a similar idea about telling the stories of other people. They're literally ghostwriters, aren't they? That's what they are. So we won't talk about that, maybe later. How did I get paid? I think I will say that, and that's part of acknowledgement. How did I get paid? How did the other people get paid? Well, obviously I had a salary from the Writers of the Future, of which half was allocated to making this project. We then, for the roadshow, got some funding from Channel 4's Nation and Regions to go out and do these workshops because they have funds to do that kind of stuff. So that's sort of two funders, and both Nesta and the Arts Council sort of pitched in a bit of money as well. The cards, I paid for those and then sold them on the net. So, and I've just about washed my face with that. I haven't made a profit. And I had a deal with everybody who's used in the cards that they get X number of free copies that I send them when they've contributed. And then if I did start to sell thousands of them, which I don't think that's ever going to happen, then there's a point when it clicks in and I do start sharing out the money to all the people who are on the list. So that it is transparent that people do get money. Only pence, not pounds, but at least some payment. And then everybody who was featured in the BBC radio drama, for which the BBC paid, obviously, they were all paid as contributors at a standard rate as well. So for each format there was a kind of funder, and then there was an arrangement with contributors that they did get something, either an object, barter, or they got a fee. But I think the other thing that we talked about before is that what most of them craved was attention, was a platform in which to be seen. That was probably the thing that they cared about most rather than the money, was the fact that they felt they were part of something that was that made them gave them a bigger circle of attention they would have done if they were doing something by themselves. Thanks very much.